All right, guys. Well, welcome everybody. Let's see. We'll get started here in one sec. All right. So welcome everybody to the April Austin DFW San Antonio Tug. My name is Chris Monahan. I'll be your MC for today's event. As always, I always like to thank the many people that help us put this event on. This is a list of the folks from our advisory council that put a lot of work in every single month to bring these events to you. So they do everything from lining up the speakers, preparing their own presentations and demos, and also helping with a lot of the scheduling as well. So it's just wonderful that everybody's willing to help out and contribute to these events. So thank you again to all of our advisory council. We got a great event planned for you today. I'll go over the agenda briefly, and then we'll touch on some housekeeping announcements. So our featured presentation is going to be Brad Wheeler, our very own advisory council member and a former veteran and VP of analytics at IBM. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his Tableau Public experience and how that sort of changed his data journey. And in addition, he's going to do a little deep dive into his Iron Viz entry this year, which is super cool. So stick around for that as well. After his presentation, we're going to have a Tableau conference, a TC panel discussion, where we're going to have a couple of folks that are going to just share their experiences that they've had with TC, some tips and tricks on how best to approach it, either whether you're there in person or virtual. So TC is right around the corner, so stay tuned and try to pick up some tips from there. As a reminder, I'd like to just mention that this is a live meeting, Zoom live meeting. So we encourage you to turn on your cameras and put it in gallery mode. That's the best viewing experience. But please observe Zoom etiquette. So if you're not speaking, just go on mute. We do have a chat window there. So we would encourage you all guys to post any questions or even comments or how much you like the presentation. Put that in the chat window. It just makes the experience more communal. If you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask our presenter, please put a private chat to Homer Hegedus. He's going to be collecting all the questions till the end, and then we'll field them from there. Also, I'll be putting a survey in the chat, so look for that. We always like getting feedback from you guys how to improve our events. So just some general housekeeping announcements. We have a May tug coming around the corner. Usually we do our tugs events on the second Thursday of the month, but due to TC, we're pushing it back a little bit for two reasons. One, we have an awesome speaker, Tabrez Sayed, who's co-founder and CEO of Mighty Canary. He's going to be doing a great presentation on how to build trust in dashboards. And it talks about some of the techniques organizations can use to instill trust in their data and their reports. So definitely don't miss that presentation. And then since it will be post TC, as we do every year, we want to do a post TC recap. So we'll cover some of the highlights, talk on some of the cool features and things that we learned from TC. So definitely don't want to miss that presentation either. As far as our tug events, we have an April 21st happy hour, which we'll talk about here in a second. And so it's our first time sort of dipping a toe into in-person events. So that's next Thursday. So please attend that if you're here in Austin. And then May 26th, we're going to have a hybrid in-person tug. So for the folks that are in Austin, we're going to have a viewing party for our tug event, and we'll have a happy hour after that. So so to sort of speak to this a little bit, I'll turn it over to James and John, who's on our advisory council, and they can tell you a little about the events coming up. James?
Awesome, thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to some brewery tug events coming up. So the first two are going to be at breweries. The second one we're still finalizing on the location, but the first one's going to be at Oscar Blues. A good parking tip is make sure you pass the big water tower that looks like the Oscar Blues, the most famous beer. I forget what it's called right now, but it's red, white, and blue. So make sure you pass that so you're not at a body shop parking there by accident. Who knows what'll happen to your car there. And yeah, it's going to be great. They have some really good beers. They are from Colorado originally and open up a brew house here. Yes, and we're going to be doing this until we either return to the Tableau office or you can have us at your office. So if you can have us at your place, please get in touch with Chris.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, James. Yeah. So as we mentioned, we're sort of dipping a toe and sort of trying to do more in-person events here. So our plan is to have our April social event. It's just social. So come meet the folks that you haven't had a chance to meet in person. And then in May, we're actually going to have our viewing party. So for those that maybe are local and want to come meet other folks while we're viewing the tug, please come join May. And then our plan is when we return in August, we're going to actually we're going to have an in-person full-blown tug. And so you can still, of course, watch it virtually. We'll have the ACE, all the audio and video set up so we can do that. But that's our plan and transition to more in-person events. So look for that in the last half of 2022. The big announcement, obviously, is that TC is right around the corner. It's May 17th through 19th. It is as well a hybrid conference. It's going to be in Las Vegas. If you have not registered, please do. It's awesome. It's super awesome. So please mark that on your calendar. So without further ado, I'd like to turn everything over to our featured speaker, Brad Wheeler, who currently is the Senior Director of BI at Omnisys. And Brad has over 20 years experience with data analytics, and he's led several user groups and also presented at TC. So he knows a lot about Tableau, and he's here today to share his experience with Tableau Public, what it sort of meant in his personal journey with data. And then he's going to share just a really great Iron Viz dashboard that he's created. So Brad, I turn it over to you.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks so much, Chris. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. One moment here. Okay. Okay, Chris, can you confirm you can see everything is good?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, thanks, Chris, for that introduction. And as he mentioned, I've been working with Tableau for coming up on 10 years. But we started with it around 2015 or so. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about that from a business standpoint. But really, what I want to talk about is from a personal standpoint and how that then actually affected from the business standpoint. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So before Tableau, my experience with data and analytics, I'm sure, was quite similar to a lot of what you guys have had in your history, or maybe you're still dealing with today. And that's just a lot of Excel. You just end up with a lot of data dumps. Maybe you get data from a database and that goes into an Excel file. Maybe you pivot it. Maybe you get a little bit fancy and hook Excel up directly to your database so you can then refresh that spreadsheet. Really fancy stuff there. And it works for quite a while. And then, but then whenever you want to present it to the customer, sometimes they want something a bit sexier than an Excel spreadsheet. So PowerPoint, of course. This was how we did analytics at Omnisys for my first couple of years leading the business intelligence team, a lot of analysis through Excel. But eventually we kind of outgrew that, and customers wanted more real-time access to their data. I'm not here to sell you Tableau. I'm just kind of telling you the story. A lot of you guys are already familiar with this story, but they want real-time access to their data. So what we did is we transitioned a lot of these reports over to Tableau, and we actually started generating some revenue for this. So customers actually now started paying for their data, which is really cool. So that's great. We created hundreds of Tableau dashboards, customer facing, driving a lot of business, a lot of growth for the business. A lot of these stories you've heard before. So I'm going to take a little bit of I'm going to divert from the path here. And the company sent the team to Tableau conference in 2015. So here we are hanging out at Tableau conference. We're there to learn about data. We got the whole team there. I can't remember that year, probably 10,000 people. I think pre-COVID, it was 18,000 or so. So it continues to grow ever bigger and bigger every year. Most of the time it was in Vegas, and it's going to be back in Vegas this year. So this was our first experience there. Went to a lot of sessions, learned a lot of things that were very applicable to our business lives at Omnisys. And a lot of those things we took home with us and implemented. But I went to one session in particular. I tried to find her session, the recorded session on YouTube, but I couldn't. But I remembered her name because she had a major impact just on me personally. Her session was something about pimping out your dashboards, all about dashboard design. The title was interesting. I went to the session. It was Jewel Lurie. And in it, she talked about design principles when it comes to Tableau and how you can design your dashboards to be engaging and telling a story and all of these very important things when it comes to business. But she used personal dashboards as her example pieces. And she didn't spend a ton of time talking about the personal content, just more and just using that as examples in teaching. And that right there was my first introduction to Tableau Public, and I was pretty hooked. So I immediately went home and started thinking about what I could do, things I could do with Tableau Public, what kind of things that can I create that would be interesting. Because when you want to share content, you typically I'm sorry, my storytelling got a little bit off there. That's not the slide I thought that was coming next. But anyway, but basically at Tableau conference, we ended up meeting a lot of data people and wanting to talk data and share content. But what ends up happening is you end up sharing stuff like this, where you're sharing stuff that might be interesting. You're talking, this particular dashboard is talking about COVID vaccines. You guys might be interested in COVID vaccines. That could be a conversation we want to have. But I can't even share the data with you. I have to block out stuff here because we have sensitive information that's being shared. And that's the case most of the time. So a lot of times when people want to just talk data, maybe it's for a job interview. Maybe it's just because they're really nerdy. I just love data. I wanted to create something that I could use to it wasn't all about bar charts and vaccines and healthcare data. So my first attempt at that was football. I love the NFL. So I did a lot of research and spent a lot of time trying to find some interesting data that I could use for football. So I found a website that was great, and I can't remember the name of it anymore, but it gave me every single game history dating back to, I think, 1962 to around 2012. And so I had the temperature of the game, the score, and a couple of other interesting things. So with that, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at, does the game temperature have an effect on the score? You would think if you're playing in sunny and 75, you might score a lot more versus in frigid cold weather. And then if it's 100, maybe that has an effect too. So I took the data, put it into Tableau, and this was my first dashboard. The approach here was just to simply just put the data there. I wasn't necessarily trying to tell a story. It's just the data. This is very business-like. I can really, looking back on this now, this feels like a business dashboard. And that it's just, here you go, figure it out. So in looking at this, I don't know, it kind of sort of tells us something, maybe not, but it was an attempt, and I think it's kind of cool. And then the next one here is words of the Bible. So at this particular phase in my life, I was actually listening an audiobook to the Bible, and I just thought it would be interesting to say, like, wow, this seems like very negative. Like the Bible is a lot more negative than I thought it was going to be. And of course, being a data person, we know that we can find data and apply sentiment analysis to each individual word. So I thought that would be really fun to do. So I started on my search to find every single word of the Bible, and I did it, and I found it. I found someone else. My first stop on that was Tableau Public. I just searched Tableau Public for Bible and ran across Robert Rouse. And he had some fantastic content that was Bible, and he had the exact data set that I wanted to use. So I reached out to him, Turns out he's a Tableau Zen master. I had no idea. I just said, hey, Robert, this is some interesting data. I would love to use it and interpret it in my own way for a side project. Not knowing he was a Tableau Zen master. Turns out he lives 10 minutes from me, and just me reaching out to him on Twitter asking if I could use his data sparked a conversation that led to lunch and led to actually a job offer, kind of. Could have been a job offer. He was a high-level consultant at Interworks and a Tableau Zen master, and just my second Tableau public dashboard led me to an introduction where, had I been in a position to take a consulting opportunity like that, I would have loved to. Ended up not being the right time and place, but wow, what a start. So if anybody is interested in any kind of Bible data at all, this is all I ever did. This is not very fancy at all. All it does is take every single word in the Bible and just apply a sentiment analysis to it. And then you can kind of do a little bit of filtering with it. It looks kind of cool though. But if you really want some cool stuff, Robert Rouse, way better. Really, really amazing stuff. He has a website and everything. So moving on, next part of the story. I found that gathering the data, while it could lead you to cool introductions to people, is really hard. I don't know how to do web scraping and API connections and things like that. So my next journey on this Tableau Public path was just to create my own data. So this is a look at two different projects. On the left is every single game that I played of Tetris 99. Now I shouldn't say every single game. I look at an asterisk in there, but you know, I was logging most games that I played. This chart started off really, really small with just 4 columns, but then as this project continued to grow, I thought, well, wouldn't it also be interesting to know what time of day I was playing, and maybe what style of defense I was playing, or maybe how many drinks I had. Does that have an impact on my win percentage? Things like that. Well, I took that and made something out of it. And then on the right is a whiteboard that we have in my house that lists about 100 or so Beat Saber songs. So my family and I have a couple of Oculus Quests. We have downloaded a bunch of Beat Saber songs on here, and we love them. But I thought, wouldn't it be fun if we actually rated each one on a scale of 1 to 10? And then if you have anything to say about it, jot it down in this notebook that's here next to this whiteboard. Using those, I just created these two dashboards, and now looking back on it, I should probably put the picture with the final result, whatever. So this is, these kind of turned into Tableau dashboards that, do they mean anything? Are they useful in any way? Are they contributing anything to society? No, they're not making me any money, but they were really fun, and they were really fun things to do. And it probably made me a better Tetris player. And I know we had a lot of fun with the family and doing this one. And these have actually, like this Beat Saber one actually has a ton of views. It has over 17,000 views. I guess people really like what we have to say about it. I don't know. But that then leads me to my most recent dashboard. And the reason we want to talk about this one in particular is because it is, this was something that I had had in the back of my mind for years. And just talking with my son about music. Luckily, I have 2 boys, and they're both fantastic. My youngest son is 13, and he also shares similar music tastes to me, and that's super lucky. I'm blessed and to be in that position. So it's awesome that I'm able to have like actual meaningful conversations about music with my son. And one of those conversations was just about how Pink Floyd's music has changed over time. And in their early music, in their early albums, you could listen to 20-minute songs that would have no vocals at all. There'd just be these really long instrumental sections versus, you know, typical albums like we have with Dark Side of the Moon, the more popular stuff is not necessarily like that. So we decided many years ago that it would be fun to do a project, and I had him sitting in the backseat of the car with a notebook, pushing pause to say, okay, that was the 2-minute mark, and he was singing right now. And then we would press play, and then he would jot down what was happening at the 3.5-minute mark when it was a transition. That was the start of it. We didn't get super far. But then Tableau Iron Viz competition was announced. It was something that I have participated in before. It's super hard, super competitive. If you don't know what the Iron Viz competition is, think Iron Chef, where you have 3 people who have 20 minutes with the same ingredients to create something and show it to the judges and have a winner. It's the same thing, but instead of having food, you're dealing with data. So everyone's given the same data set, and you have then 20 minutes to create a visualization. It's not exactly 20 minutes because you can do a lot of prep work, but you still have 20 minutes to go from opening Tableau to creating the content. It's one of the most popular and fun events at Tableau conference. It's really, really cool. Everybody wants to, I shouldn't say everybody. I've always dreamed of being on that stage. I thought it would be super cool. So I've tried a couple of times. This was my 2022 entry. Spoiler alert, I did not win. This presentation would have been a lot cooler had I won, had I been selected to compete, but whatever. It's super hard. There's 196 entries, so no one takes the top 3. This was my entry into it. So it was, if nothing else, it gave me an excuse to finish this project. So my original intent right over this presentation was to now stop the slides and switch over and actually go into Tableau and show you some of the more technical aspects behind the creation process. But I've actually gotten some feedback that people are really interested in the creative process, like how do you go from idea to dashboard? So before we get into the technical aspect, I want to just take a step back and just talk about like what that process looks like and what that creative process is. So I think that's really valuable. So spoiler alert, I'm not super creative. Like the most creative thing I could do with this slide was just make the creative thing yellow. So, I'm not showing you anything super amazing. This is my spreadsheet that we had. So initial idea, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? This is how we thought it would be cool to structure the data, where we'd have one entry for each segment of the song. So what we see here is the first album, Piper of the Gates of Dawn. Their first track on that album is Astronomy Domine. And that's why it's listed 6 times here, because they have 6 different transitions where they go from instrumental to vocal to instrumental to vocal. So you see those time marks there. That's what the data looks like. It takes forever to do this. That's why we stopped, right? So I can't even tell you how long this took, because it took forever just to do it the first time. And that was probably 2 albums to do. But then as you have a goal, then it becomes more important. So the Iron Viz became important. So it was something that I could do at work, while kind of, if you're there, it doesn't take too much attention, especially on longer songs that have really long instrumental sections. So a lot of time. I'll just leave it at that. But then once you have that, it's like, okay, I have, how do I get rid of this thing? Anyway, so this was my initial pass at the dashboard. And what I did is I just took go away. This was just every album. There's no kind of graphic here. This breaks each album up by percentage of vocal versus instrumental. And then beneath that is just showing the year, the album, and then what that looks like in order. This was my first attempt at a dashboard with this content. Then I thought, I gotta get this thing to go away. Let me see if I can. Hang on. Okay, you know what? We're just gonna not do.
It's not showing up on our side, Brad.
Okay, well, it's not showing up on your side. Okay, cool. Well, I can see over there. Perfect. So I knew I needed a really interesting header, so I just plugged in colorful graphic. And I wasn't sure what I was going to call this, so I just called it the architecture of Pink Floyd. And then I just kind of laid out these different things here over time. And then I knew I could have these albums underneath here. This is attempt number 2. So you can kind of see some of this framework process happening. So then I thought, you know what, I should really make something. If I could make, instead of just something interesting, what if I made the albums themselves? And I actually think it was Chris, our wonderful host, and mentioned that to me. He's like, just the albums themselves are art. It's like, you know what, you're right. What if I try to make something out of that? So I put those across the bottom, and then I put these, each song underneath there. Now, the problem here, though, is that it's not centered and it doesn't look quite right. So then it took a little bit of work to get them centered, but then the centering here doesn't quite work because they're no longer in order. The only way I could get my best way to get them centered was to put all of the instrumental on one side and all of the vocals on the other. That kind of gives you a centering effect, but it doesn't quite work. It just doesn't look right. So it actually took quite a bit of work, and I had to really experiment a lot to get it to be in chronological order, but also centered. Basically, it required me to do math to figure out the midpoint of the song, and then take the starting point of that segment and subtract it from the midpoint of the song. So now what that does is it gives me the difference from the middle, and then you chart on that. And it's a little bit complicated. Hopefully that makes sense, but if not, it's not super important. Basically, it took a lot of trial and error to get it here. But once I had it here, I was pretty happy with my header, with my interactive. This was going to be interactive, and what I'm going to have to do is, as I hover over each of these things, I want it to show something interesting. I want it to look cool, but also be interactive. But now I need a colorful graphic to go across the top. I'm not very creative, so really all I did was just downloaded this Pink Floyd font and then just called it the Pink Floyd Project. So, you know, forgive me. Oh, that's it. But now we're actually going to switch over to Tableau. So that was my kind of creative process. I wanted to kind of walk you through the beginning idea and then just some of the different steps that it took to get there, but I can actually show you in Tableau. So let me exit here, and we can actually look at some of these early stage dashboards. So here they are. Here's dashboard 1, where we already have some interesting things happening in these tooltips. So notice in the tooltips, we actually have the album art and each song, which is nice. And then I have this is one I showed you earlier. And this was dashboard 2, that attempt. I think we already walked through these. So we can go ahead and go to the final. So here's the final product. Let me just, I want to probably spend just 5 minutes on this, and then we'll leave 10 minutes, I suppose, for questions, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for panel discussion. Does that sound good to you, Chris? Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll walk through this in about 10 minutes. I'm sorry, 5 minutes here. Okay, so yeah, so this is the final product. So we have that header that was just created with that font, but then this is the interactive graphic that we have across the top. And what it's showing us is each album, the year it was released, the total tracks, total time, global sales, percentage vocals, and percentage instrumental total on the album. And then you see each individual song and those percentages beneath that. So just that in itself, I was actually like really happy with it. I was like, wow, just that is pretty cool. And yeah, just call it a day. But I wanted to keep going because just having it all buried in the tooltip is cool. It looks cool and it's interactive, but we have to also consider this being distributed because a lot of time what will happen is this will just be treated as a screenshot, as an image. And that image will be what gets looked at, not necessarily someone hovering their mouse over. So you kind of want to build things, if you're creating this kind of content, as if it's also could be looked at like an image. So I had this cool interactive header was hopefully attention grabbing, but I needed more. So I want to also tell the story. So here I just kind of narrate my story. And what we say here is no two Pink Floyd albums sound the same. It can be hard to explain exactly how they're different, but a lot of it has to do with the basic structure and length of the song and whether or not someone's actually singing. In an effort to inject some data into my musical conversations, I analyzed each of Pink Floyd's tracks and labeled individual song segments as vocal and instrumental. The final result is a bunch of data. and it wasn't always fun. Yumaguma is terrible. So then we start the interactive process here. We have this, I didn't show you a second ago, and then I'm not sharing my desktop audio, so you actually won't hear it. But the other part of this that's pretty cool is as you hover over these different bar charts, it shows you these bar charts represent each individual song. And as you hover over them, it tells you, you see the album art, you see the track information, if it's an instrumental or a vocal. If it is an instrumental, I'm sorry, if it is a vocal, it will tell you the vocal that's being sung, like the words. So here is, that's an instrumental. So here's Us and Them from the album Dark Side of the Moon. And at 6 minutes and 18 seconds is a 1 minute and 29 second vocal section that begins with Down and Out, sung by Rick Wright. And if we click that, I turned it off. If we click that, it will actually open in YouTube to that specific segment in the song and play that specific thing. So that is super cool, but it can be annoying if you're clicking in here and you're constantly being shown a YouTube pop-up ad. So I gave the user the ability to turn that off with a little hint here that explains that. So it's playing in my ears. I've got to stop it. Okay. So now, what I thought would be cool and interesting, I also thought about this being looked at exactly with a screen this size. If you're looking at this and you're scrolling through, you're only going to see this much of a window. I wanted something that would look good in this segment. So I felt like these type of bar charts would have been too much information, especially given how big this header was. So how am I going to squeeze 40 years of music into this small thing? I don't know. Let's make a Pink Floyd barcode. So basically what this barcode looking thing is all of those bar charts just squished together into one long timeline. So if we look at it this way, we can actually see some interesting things. We see these long segments of instrumentals here in their early times. We see this, like, that's just one song. And then we see these interesting segments here with lots and lots of short vocal sections. This is the wall in the final cut. And then we see this end here, which is their last album, which is basically all instrumental. So we can see that. It tells a story right here with really not having to do much. But we actually need more. So let's do a real analytical breakdown. So here we just show a breakdown of the data. So I kind of talk through that and what I just did, kind of the narration of that bar chart above. But now we just break it down by album and overlay the sales with that. So we can see the popularity of the albums. We see Dark Side of the Moon here, that was the most popular. And then we see The Wall is the second most popular. And Wish You Were Here is third, and Animals were fourth. This is pretty much the golden era of Pink Floyd, and everybody's pretty much familiar with probably these three albums. Animals maybe not so much, but it's underrated. And then, so you can kind of see their popular times, and then there are times not so popular. And then finally, we close it off with just a side-by-side comparison tool. So if you were having a conversation with someone and you wanted to just talk about the differences of two albums and say, like, man, the final cut is really all about Roger Waters telling his story, and it's really almost all vocals. And you can really see that. And if at any point in the conversation you just want to hear some music, just click it and it'll play it in YouTube. Or if you want to talk about the brilliant guitar segments of Dogs, you can see those here. So this is hopefully a great conversation piece. And then we just close it off with a little closing narration of things that I wish I could do if I had more time. One of those being, wouldn't it be cool to break this out by actual singer and see how that affects things. And then there's a ton of data here. So I actually had added a tab. So that way people, if they're just interested in the data, you can just come here and just look at all the data, all the notes and the different YouTube links and all of the things, all of my work. Here you go. Take it and do something cool with it. Or if you want more of a businessy type of a thing where you have some filters and some things here, you can certainly do that and play with this to your heart's end. And then this is my work in progress for lead vocals. So, I can see the different singers when they sang, and you can see David Gilmour was pretty much there for most of the live band's lifespan. And Sid Barrett was just the beginning. And then everybody else I just kind of put into other. But yeah, that's the Pink Floyd project. So that was created in Tableau. So I suppose I should actually show you Tableau Public, since we've been talking about it this whole time. So once you create content like that, you would just do, let's not publish that one. You would do server, Tableau Public. So you guys are probably familiar. If you're working with Tableau, you probably are publishing your workbook to your internal server today. It's very similar to publish to Tableau. You just go one a little bit further and then save to Tableau Public. That's going to ask you to log in and so forth. I'm actually going to cancel because then it will end up going to your Tableau Public profile. That looks kind of like this. So you can see all of my content here. Here's the words of the Bible one we saw earlier. Here's the NFL scoring. This particular one was selected as a Tableau Viz of the day. The performance, let's see. It works better if you download it to your desktop, I think. This used to be a bit better. What would happen is the tooltips, I think, as you hover over, you get to see the artist and then all the information for that artist right there where it says number, number, number. Let me see if I zoom in. So you can fix this. Basically, anytime you see any kind of content and you say, oh, that's interesting, you can just click download the Tableau workbook. And then you can then open that and edit it. So like that one that we saw was a little bit messed up. You could actually do that and open it and correct it and then publish it to your own profile. This was created back in Tableau 9.1, so really old, but you can actually see exactly how it's supposed to work there. And you can break it down. So that's what's great about Tableau Public. So let's see, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but because I want to make sure we have time for the panel and questions. But that is definitely not the end of the story. So I ended up meeting Robert Rouse. I've had, there's 100%, I know for sure I landed my job at Vice President of Analytics at IBM Watson Health based on these dashboards. I shouldn't say I got them only because of these dashboards, but it was a conversation topic and they were brought up in the meeting. And basically every interview that I've had, people talk about this content. That's kind of the moral of the story. I didn't really talk too much about that. I spent too much time talking about the creative process, but really the benefits of it have been huge. It's just been introductions to people, this data community. I'm now sitting on this Tableau Advisory Council. Who am I? I'm just some guy. And now I get to hang out with people like Homer and Chris and Kobe and John and James, and it's awesome. And then now we're going to host the this Tableau panel here in just a second. So let's go ahead and end it there. I will stop my share and we'll let Homer jump in here if we have any questions.
Yeah, Homer, any questions?
I didn't have any come to me as direct messages, but one person I can count on to have a question is our own Mr. Kobe Sparks. You have a question for Brad, Kobe?
Actually, I actually have two, Brad. One is, I'm looking at your different dashboards and things. How do you pick your colors?
Oh man, that's a great question.
Because they're all different, and I'm just curious how do you go through that thought process?
That's a great question. So I spend probably too much time on that, but maybe it's not too much time, right? And my degree was actually in marketing. So I consider things like color palette, font to be really important. So I actually use a website, and I'll put the link here. I'll put it in chat. That's great for a Tableau, for a color palette creation. And basically you can just pick a starting color and then it will give you just press the space bar and it will randomly generate colors for you until you find some combination that you like. It's fantastic.
Hey, the other one is, I've never used image were all those Viz and tooltips? You were using the images? How does that work?
Yeah, so if you want to use a Viz, if you want to use an image in a Viz and a tooltip, what you would do is you would create a sheet that would just be your images, right? So you would create a sheet of images, and then you would have the filter apply to whatever the thing is. And so then you insert the sheet in your tooltip. So you would, I can show you, I mean, actually, I'll just show you. Share screen. Oh, and I can, while we're here, I can show you the website too. This one. So this tooltip is just really, there's nothing in here. It's 2 sheets. So the first name is called Tooltip Album Image, and it has a maximum width and height of 200. And then the next is called Tooltip Track Info, and it has a width and height of 350. So then whenever you hover it, this is actually, these are side by side. So that if I had put a line break in between those here,
Yep. Okay.
they would stack. And then, so then that's when you have to think about the width of it. You want to make your width consistent. And then here, if I unhide all sheets, we'll see this. This is what they look like. So basically you have all of the images. You bring all of the images, and then your filter is just filtering them out. That's what this is doing.
Cool. And so since you mentioned the size and all that, what do you do for typical use a fixed width and height all the time when you do Tableau Public?
Yeah, I do, because I typically, if I'm, yeah, I do, because design, I consider design in this instance is more important than flexibility. So for my use case, I do fix it.
Okay, thanks. Good job, Brad.
Oh, thank you. There was another question in here on NFL predictions. Let me pull up the webpage real quick. So the question was, how accurate with my NFL predictions? It's pretty funny, I think. So let me share that real quick. I was not accurate. So what this one shows, I was 53% correct. So this was before the season. So my friend and I made a sizable bet. We had to predict every single game before the season started. So you have no insight. So I was only 53%. He beat me by a long shot. But then I figured, hey, what if we had just done completely random? I did a random number generator and figured it out. And then I said, what if I had always picked the home team? I did better than the random, but I should have always just picked the home team. Next time I know. And then let me show that website real quick. And then I think we have panel.
Yeah, we're good on time, Brett.
We're good on time? Okay, perfect. So this website, you just start the generator, and basically you just decide how many colors you want. Okay, I don't want the tutorial. And then if you say you want to keep one, you lock these in, or if you wanted to manually say, I also want whatever, you can kind of pick your color and then you just do the space bar and it'll do ones that kind of go with it. And I gotta get out of this. There we go. And then whatever ones you decide, oh, I like those, and then you can hit the space bar and it'll give you other ones. And then you can, get rid of that. It depends on how many you want. And, this is basically what I use. So I will publish this link real quick.
Yeah, and I can send that out too with a recap email. Brett.
Okay, awesome.
Brett, I did have a question for you in regards to your design process. So are you one that is more of a pencil paper sketch it out, or you wireframe it, or are you just, hey, let's just start creating content in Tableau? It's just iterative. Like,
yeah, so
process?
my initial my first challenge is the data. So okay, so here's a good example of what I'm doing right now. So my next project is going to be 101 games of Uno, and it's a family project. We are super into Uno at my house, and we take it pretty seriously. So I'm logging every game and what temperature it is outside, what time it is, the seating position, to know, am I winning more when I'm seating next to you versus not next to you? I'm thinking we're going to have some cool machine learning opportunities with this data. So my first step is gathering the data, and that's usually a relatively long process. Like with that Beat Saber data and things like that, and the Pink Floyd data, it's just that's a long process. So then as I'm gathering it, I'm just thinking in my mind of what can I possibly do with it. So then my next step would then be to pull it into Tableau and then just start slicing and dicing and seeing how my dimensions and my measures stack up. So I'll find some interesting measures. I'll try to find maybe 3 to 4 interesting measures. And then I'll try to find interesting dimensions that can show me different slices of the data. And then what I usually end up with is some very business looking type of dashboards that we kind of saw in my initial versions there, where it's just like, okay, this is how the data looks. But then you have to think about, how do I make this artistic and something that people would actually stop and look at? Because that's kind of the goal, right? You're trying to catch someone's attention. So then at that point is usually when I turn to whiteboard or paper. I love computer paper with no, if I work with paper, it's blank. It's just paper that I would grab off the printer, and it's just blank paper that I could take a pen or a pencil to. And then it's just dashboarding. And I love whiteboard though. Every room in my house, including outside, has a whiteboard. Because I want to be able to always have the ideas. And I probably have a photo somewhere of my whiteboard with this idea of what this could look like. So hopefully that's helpful. So it's the data process, then it's how can we possibly do it? And then it's how can I get creative with the data?
Yeah, no, that helps. Yeah. You know, what's apparent throughout the presentation is just how dedicated you are in collecting the data. That dedication alone is really amazing. And I like too how you get your family involved. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, like you said, is just amazing how giving to the Tableau community, through Tableau Public has sort of just again helped you during your data journey, both personally and professionally. I just really think that's a real cool story.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been even though it's a little bit disappointing, obviously, when you like put a lot of work into it and then you don't win or whatever, but it's still like even not winning, it still gives you an excuse to create some content that will be remembered forever. And like I've spent countless times just sitting down with people going through this content because it's interesting. It marks interesting parts of your life. There's data in here where I was tracking my Fitbit data. There's a 40 days with Fitbit. And if you hover over any of there, it actually documents my mom's stroke. As I was collecting that data, my mom had a stroke that was really life-threatening. We didn't think she was going to make it. She was unconscious for like kind of coma for like 2 months. Oh, wow. And that's like part of that data. So how cool is it now that as 10 years later, with her alive and well, we can like go back and randomly run across that in a Tableau dashboard. It's really cool. Wow. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your presentation and story. This was amazing. So everybody give Brad a virtual round of applause there. So, and he's not going anywhere because he's hosting our next panel. So we're going to bring you back on stage, Brad. So I'll turn it back over to you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if we should even bother with a screen share here. I think what we should probably do is just have Chris, Kobe, and Mon and James just unmute, and we'll just have a conversation.
Yeah. So for those that, that are just joining us or tuned in a little late, we always do a post TC presentation, but we thought it'd be sort of cool this year to help people that are maybe new to Tableau Conference or haven't been as frequently. Hey, what are some of the cool things that we like, and what are some tips maybe to how to get the best out of TC? So this was Brad's idea. So yeah, let's you can kick it off, Brad.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I will, just one moment. Thanks. I just realized I missed 2 questions in chat.
Oh, did you?
So before we do that, so I saw James, how accurate were you? Not very. Mark, how were you able to include every Pink Floyd song? Were they all available on YouTube? Actually, yes. So getting every song, this is another manual process, literally going to YouTube, copying, pasting. Luckily, I was able to then append just the time mark. All you need is just like ampersand and I think it's T equals, and you can just pass the time. So I had done, believe it or not, all the hard work was gathering the data. Getting the YouTube links was super easy. And then I know you could look at the data. Do you publish Tableau Public on a regular basis? No. What you saw as I scrolled through there was probably 25 dashboards over close to 10 years. So like once or twice a year. And then you got one by DM, Homer?
Yeah, that's right. Besher, I hope I didn't butcher your name, but Besher asks, how do you stick with it? This looked like it was so much work and an incredible amount of perseverance. What motivates you, and how do you keep with it? And he made a comment that it's easy to be excited and enthusiastic when you start a project, but a lot of times it fades, and particularly if it's not something you have to do, like a work project.
Yeah.
How do you keep going? What motivates you?
Yeah, and the answer is honestly, I don't. Most of the time. So like the content that you see published on Tableau Public is my finished content. I mean, I've got so much other stuff that's just like, well, why bother, right? Because like who cares? Who's gonna ask me why isn't this published yet? I end up telling myself that a lot of times when I put these false deadlines on myself. So a lot of it is just personal stuff that just never gets finished. But then you have things come along like Iron Viz, or if you're part of the community and you do things like Makeover Monday. Basically, a lot of it comes down to being part of a community. Otherwise, who cares? Why are you doing that? Why am I wasting my time creating this content that no one's going to look at? But if I'm part of a community that cares, and they're telling me, please create this, we want to look at it, and actually have people looking, there's nothing more disheartening than spending a lot of time on something and publishing it and nobody looks at it. It's like, why bother? So I think the community has a lot to do with it, and it's one of the motivating factors to actually push things over the finish line.
That's
all right.
great.
All right. So let's get to the panel. So sorry for the sidebar there, but we'll start with Kobe and Aman and Chris and James. How many years have you guys each been to Tableau conference? So let's start off with Aman. How about you?
So I've been in person twice, right? And then the last 2 years obviously have been virtual. So I think my first official one was New Orleans in 2018.
What was the other one?
So the next year went again with IBM when it was in Vegas, and I think I ran into you because you were at Omnisys at that time, and so we got to meet up and watch some of the I think it was Iron Viz and whatnot, and obviously the opening keynote. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah. How about you, Chris? How many have you been to?
I think I'm at 6 right now. I have a couple Vegas, and then New Orleans. That was fun. That was probably my favorite.
New Orleans was your favorite?
Well, I'm partial to Vegas, so I sort of, so I have to have sort of my number 2 favorite, but yeah, and then Austin, of course. So.
Oh, cool. I did not make it to the Austin one.
Yeah, it was a good time. I think that's when Tableau realized we outgrew a lot of cities, and we're just going to have to do it in Vegas all the time.
Exactly.
So,
the Salesforce approach of just having it in San Francisco every year because it's too big to move.
Yeah, exactly.
How about you, James?
2015 was my first year as well.
Oh wow! So Vegas for you, and then where else? Have you been anywhere else?
Austin and Vegas, and
cool.
I was during the New Orleans one. I was in the go sailing across it, so I wasn't able to make it.
What were you doing? You were sailing where?
Across the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, awesome. That's cool. And Kobe, how many have you been to?
Been to 3, 2 Vegas and the New Orleans. The New Orleans to me was so crowded and the convention was so long. It was like a mile from one end to the next. And plus you had to walk along. But I mean, it was good exercise, but the whole thing was really crowded. It was.
Yeah.
I really liked the Mandalay Bay location though. That's 2 of those.
Yeah.
Now, are all you guys going back for in person this year?
I am. Yeah, I'll be there this year. Yeah.
Virtual for me.
Virtual for James. How about Aman and Kobe?
Yeah, I'm virtual as well.
Kobe, you
I'm going to be, my wife and I are going to be in Maui. So I'm
Oh,
sending a
okay.
member of our team, so.
Just you and me, Chris. Just you and me. We'll get a drink together.
All
So
right.
what are
Yeah.
your most, what, for those of you that have been, and for those that are going to be, a lot of people are probably going for their first time. What are some of the must attend events? Does anybody have events that are like, you know, you don't make sure you don't miss this?
I think the devs on stage is one of my favorite. And
By far.
it's so much better in person than it has been virtually, because there's so much excitement and they just do an amazing job. It's not, I couldn't get up and do what they do, you know, to present, but that's my favorite.
Yeah.
I would agree, totally agree. Like I know a lot of people like Iron Viz, but you know, I like devs on stage, seeing all the cool features and things like that. That is by far my favorite one.
That's awesome.
No, and data night out. And data night out. Don't forget about that.
Yeah. For sure. Were you there? You were there for the one where they shut down Fremont Street, right?
Yeah, Fremont. Yeah, exactly.
I've never been to a
Crazy.
party that amazing. That was the best party I've ever been to. Was that data night out, Tableau? I think that was 2015. They completely shut down Fremont Street. The only way you could get on Fremont Street was if you had a Tableau badge, right? It was awesome. I actually gave my tab. I actually went. So there's a lot of people who were trying. They were just in Vegas, not part of Tableau. I bumped into a dad and his son who had taken. I'm sorry, a dad who had taken his son there at the blackjack table for his 21st birthday. They couldn't get onto Fremont Street because they didn't have a Tableau badge. But I gave him mine and said, "Bring it back in an hour." So he went in there, got a bunch of free drinks and free food. But yeah, that was pretty fun. That was the best one I've been to as well. Oh yeah, so Chris, this was one of your topics. What are some networking tips that you have for conference? Because that is a great place to do that.
Yeah, I thought you know, the brain dates are pretty cool when they did that in person. You know, that's a good way to network on topics that interest you. And then I like just talking to people while I'm sitting at waiting for the sessions to start. I think that's the coolest way to network, but not everybody's into that. It's a little bit of an icebreaker to reach and talk to somebody next door, but I like doing that. I meet a lot of interesting folks that way. So
I'll sit next to you, Chris.
I think one thing, if you've got something that you're sort of been wondering how to do, or you're stumped on, the Tableau doc thing is pretty good. The doctor, it goes pretty quick too. You make an appointment and you get in, you know, if the person doing it can't answer it, they bring in other doctors and specialists. And I think that's sort of cool too, if you're getting stumped on something or, you know, just want some help.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, to talk about Tableau Doctor, I was one of the doctors at one point, and they would have Zen Masters sit with us as well. So that was pretty cool to develop with them on the spot.
That's awesome. What were some of the more challenging things you had, James? Were you able to solve everything, or?
No, there were a few that I had to send on to support, but there was one for developing something with stocks, and I can't remember what the name of it was now, but it was to figure out the volume trading and to predict if that was going to be a dip or a spike in the price. And I ended up doing that one in person, just found the equation and just plugged that in a Tableau.
Wow, that's cool.
That was pretty cool.
All right, cool. So I guess we're coming up on the end here. So let's close it off with any tips for first-time conference attendees. Aman, any tips that you give anybody who's coming for the first time?
Yeah, no, I think what was really cool was when I was at IBM and you got us started on Tableau and exploring public. I would say, to Brad's point and pretty much the crux of this presentation, get involved with the community, get involved with public, because once you go to conference and you start seeing those same people in the community and on public, it's really cool in terms of like networking, collaborating on future projects and whatnot. So that's what I would say. I would say kind of like get involved with the community before you go, because in a lot of ways you get to meet these people in person and it's really cool.
Good.
Yeah, I would say one of the strategies, especially if we're going with a team, and we want to take notes, we sort of compare sort of which presentations everybody's going to have. So it's sort of like a divide and conquer. I think that always works well, even if you're in person or just virtual. I like the customer presentations. I would say a tip is like, check that, just see, like sort of what Mon's saying, like it's a community and, everybody's sharing best practices of what they're doing. So if you can check out the customer presentations, I always find those fascinating. And then I guess the last thing I would say, if you're going virtual this year, like real time, I always they're recorded. So there's real tendency, or at least for me, like, hey, I'll catch it later. I can't make all of them, but things come up and you never go back and watch it. So if you can carve out that time to watch it real time, I think that helps out a lot. So
Yeah, one of my big things is just wear real comfortable shoes, real comfortable clothes, because you're gonna be walking a lot, and it's just, everybody's pretty cash there, right? I mean, it's not a formal thing at all. So that's one thing I liked about it, was just really, just laid back. Everybody was there just to do Tableau stuff. So, but wear comfortable shoes.
Awesome. That was fun. Well, thanks y'all. That was a nice panel. Hopefully that was helpful for everybody. But Chris, you want to send us off here?
yeah, no, thanks again, Brad, for your presentation, and thanks James Munn and Kobe for helping out on the panel. I guess we'll be and Homer also for helping out with fielding the questions. So yeah, we have our happy hour next Thursday. I hope to see a lot of you guys there. I'll be sending, there'll be another reminder going out here this week, just so please RSVP so we know how many folks are showing, and we'll see you guys at our next May event. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye.